In the modern age, playing any sort of game on a smartphone, especially free ones, is often a thing that gets poked fun at or criticized, thanks to the recent advent of free-to-play gacha games that are meant to make their money by intrusive ads that drive you insane or by draining your wallet by microtransactions. A lot of folks brush off mobile gaming as a whole because of this, despite the fact there's still a ton of excellent titles out there, including paid apps that bring over retro games that were never given an English release before, like Romancing Saga 2, and free-to-play games that let you do quite a bit without spending a dime, like Fire Emblem Heroes. On the other hand, there are a lot of terrible apps, both free apps and paid apps, so it goes both ways, and the terrible apps tend to leave a bigger impression on the mainstream market, and that's a shame. There's also the really irritating problem of old apps that people enjoyed years ago being utterly worthless now because they haven't been updated forever, and they're unlikely to ever be updated ever again. Unlike a 3DS, which can play the earliest eShop title like Pyramids on the latest firmware, the iOS and Android firmwares tend to break older games after a while if they aren't updated to be compatible. So in most cases, these titles end up getting silently delisted, or they are just left on the store for curious buyers to purchase and have a busted game in their inventory. It's even worse when you consider how iOS exclusive games from the older days are trickier to preserve than Android games, and even if they are preserved, if the servers are down or only work in specific circumstances, it's often not worth the effort. That's why a lot of old pre-iPhone games are so hard to keep track of, and often vanish into the abyss of lost media. But what if we look back at the earlier age of mobile gaming, when iOS was still relatively fresh and only reached iOS 4, when folders were actually brand new to the mobile gaming market? That's what I'm here to do today on Eternal Memories. Welcome back to Eternal Memories, everyone. It's a busy November, but it's near the holidays, and that's when I got this nifty device. And so I decided to take a look back on mobile gaming because I played a lot of stuff on this device, and I've seen lots of people showing negativity towards the mobile gaming market as a whole, including myself, honestly, for how it's affected modern games, like the AAA games that now have microtransactions, or the games that are dumbed down so that little kids who are dumbed down by smartphone games can understand them. Looking at new Pokemon Awake Ruby now for Sapphire. But anyways, for the most part, the mobile gaming landscape is often ridiculed and, well, criticized, and I can understand that in most cases. But there was a good time in mobile gaming that I kinda wish people would go back to if only the industry would change. And this is what I'm gonna reminisce about on Eternal Memories with my handy iPod Touch. So what if I told you that this little device I have still works despite the battery net dying in only 20 minutes after full charge? Well, let's take a look at some of the mobile games I grew up with back in the day, from the era of late 2009 when I got this thing, to the end of 2011 when I lost interest in it. I was a huge fan of playing games on this device, since at this point in time the DS and Wii bored me to death because of the simplistic games they had, and also because of the fact that there wasn't much new I was going to try because of my hatred towards third parties from the aforementioned bad Nicktoons game. Needless to say, outside of games like Pokemon and the occasional hit like Mario Galaxy 2, I had little excitement for console video games as a whole, and I didn't have any interest in getting a PS3 or Xbox anytime soon. So this nifty iPod Touch came along, which I got on Christmas of 2009 as my go-to device for internet browsing until the Wii U came out in 2012, where I finally retired the device altogether until this video. I spent an insane amount of time on this device, and one of the first games I bought with my iTunes card was EA's version of Tetris. This is a great port of the classic game, and it was one I spent at least a dozen hours on while passing the time, or just to get a new high score when I was bored. I looked up the newest version of Tetris when I got my school iPad, and I could only find Tetris Blitz, which is a really awful version of the game loaded with microtransactions and crappy social features. Sadly, the old version I'm playing on screen is long gone and has been replaced with another free-to-play version that's also terrible. This kinda makes me scared what will happen when this device finally dies, since my grandmother's email was used for this old device before I was of age and I got my own devices for school, like the iPads they gave out, so the accounts I use for my new phone are separate from the account I use on my old iPod Touch, and thus I can't re-download everything from the old device. My grandma can on her iPad, since it's technically her account, but I'd really rather not have the situation get any more confusing by calling Apple and having specific games move to a different account. I heard there was family sharing, but then I don't want her getting the games I have, so it's a big mess. Don't even get me started on the music albums I bought for the device, since I did that all the way until early 2016 on her big computer downstairs so I could listen to it on my iPod Nano and iPod Shuffle, which were also associated with my grandma's accounts, since they're just music devices. Moving on from Tetris, before Pokemon Shuffle Mobile came to the App Store and the Pokédex before it, Pokemon and Nintendo games as a whole were nowhere to be found, and a lot of third-party apps related to these games were on the store. Surprisingly, back in the day, at least on the iOS store, they rarely contained the stuff you see on modern-day App Store and Google Play, which is now plagued with Chinese bootleg crap that we deal with, and back in 2009, it was mostly just unofficial game guides that actually came in handy for me back in the day, since I didn't need an internet connection if I got stuck on a game like Animal Crossing, or a handheld game if I was out on a world trip. For example, Animal Crossing, which I was obsessed with at the time since this was back when I was on Animal Crossing Community 24/7. Unfortunately, I found out very recently that this guide I'm looking at right now was made by a company known as Ethan Productions, and he seems to be dead now, the company at least, and these guides were mostly stolen from GameFAQs. It appears all of his other guides that I have on my device, including this one you're looking at right now, were pulled from the App Store, and I do remember when that happened not long after he had to remove the logos and the app thumbnails for copyright reasons, which led to some of the guides turning into very boring app designs, at least before you open them. And this Moya 3D Land guide that was published by some company named iCollect appears to be the only remnant from this Ethan Productions era, which is still in the App Store. There are still newer guide apps in the App Store, of course, but none of the newer ones I found were as helpful as the ones I grew up with. Probably because it's not stolen from GameFAQs and it's written poorly by a guy with, well, little knowledge of the game or just in an attempt to make money. So, let's move on to unofficial Pokemon apps. These were also somewhat common, as not only were the aforementioned game guides available, but there were also several apps that had clever concepts, such as this Pokemon Snap one, which predated Pokemon Go by 7 years as a revolutionary epic game. The concept sounds amazing. Take a picture of something interesting you can find in the house, and it'll match it to one of the first 151 Pokemon, tasking you to catch them all by photo-taking to what's closely resembling them. Sadly, since the iPod Touch lacks a camera, you can only use downloaded images on the device, which back in the day led to some interesting results. For example, despite me clearly submitting a picture of Pikachu's sprite, it thinks I sent it a picture of Metapod. The weird Grovyle and Celebi shipping knot that was on my device at the time for some reason makes some sense cause he's green and Metapod's green, but why did Pikachu not get Pikachu? Also, it seems a lot of fan art I randomly saved on this device were linked to that shipping pair. I'd love to find those fan artists for the pics that I saved on the device and tell them how happy these drawings made me growing up, even though I don't know where they are because I took them off Google Images when I was like 10. But after my experience with DeviantArt and the fact I can't find some of these pictures on DeviantArt for the life of me, I don't think it's possible to reconnect with some of these artists. But if someone does know who put out these drawings I put crappy Dr. Seuss filters on back in the day, please let me know. I'd love to say hi to the artists, say thank you to them, and apologize for the, well, obsession with the shipping I had back in the day. Because I really do feel bad for not being able to give credit to these artists who did make these drawings and had passion in doing so. If I had the image downloaded on my computer, I could do a reverse image search to solve the problem, but I'm not plugging in the device to my MacBook anytime soon. No way, not with the MacBook having a different Apple ID assigned to it. And you know what, now that I think about it, I think just randomly assigns a Pokemon to a picture with no actual effort to recognize it whatsoever, so it's just a dumb gimmick. Let's move on to the other unofficial app I enjoyed back in the day, Sounds of Johto, which is just a fancy music player that plays BGM with from Gold and Silver. Something's not right when these clips sound better than buying the Heart Gold and Soul Silver albums off iTunes and trying to listen to those god-awful Game Boy sound renditions that use crappy MIDI files for the retro sounds. Moving on again, let's look at a Pokemon game countdown for black and white versions. This is weird. It says it's been like over 2,000 days since the game came out, and according to this guide, according to this information tab, it says they are not for the 3DS, even though that was common knowledge. Wait a minute, this countdown really sucks. It didn't even count down to the Japanese release date. It was... Wait, I do remember this being free, but oh my god, it actually costed $2 for a while. I do remember it cost $2 for like a short bit of time. This is just a dumb scam. Moving on. This time we'll look at something I'm sure more people from this time period who played iOS devices remember. Open Faint. That weird social network before Game Center became a thing, with achievements, leaderboards, etc. in a community forum. This is one of the free games of the day they gave out, a fun puzzle game known as Blox Mania, which I actually do quite enjoy even to this day. I'd buy this again for my newer phone, but sadly they haven't updated it since 2011, so it won't even work on the newer device. At least that's what I assumed would happen if I tried installing it on my iPhone SE. Apparently my username for Open Faint was Calumet Golf as well, which is 2 Digimon Tamers callbacks in a row. And I didn't even intend for this one to be a thing, it was just a thing that popped up when I opened the app for the video. Anyways, this is where using my iPhone as a camera, since it's the only camera I have next to my laptop, is a bit of a mistake, since in the following clips, it'll be a bit hard to capture off-screen footage of the upcoming games in landscape mode. Unfortunately, that means we will have to deal with either an ugly, hairy leg for the bits I couldn't crop out, or just awful gameplay for the bits I didn't need to crop out. So sorry about the upcoming bad quality of the footage, but the next game I grew up with was a classic, Mega Man 2. I played this port in late 2011, shortly after enjoying Wily's Revenge on the 3DS Virtual Console. I heard really great things about this game, and since it was on the App Store, I decided to buy it and I actually really enjoyed it. Which is kinda funny considering how I think the actual console version is mediocre compared to the other NES games like Mega Man 6, which is my favorite in the series. This version has an exclusive easy mode, which is even easier than the already easy normal difficulty from the western releases of the console version, if you can believe that. Overall, the controls are actually pretty good, although Mega Man has a floaty jump that will take quite a while to get used to if you played any of the NES games. Think the floaty jump for Mega Man 2 for Game Boy, and you'll know what I mean. By far, the best part is port's easy modes that actually fixes the one boss in the game that makes me hate the console versions, the Boo Beam Trap. Instead of the crash power energy draining quickly as this cheap boss uses homing attacks on you, it drains very slowly, giving you more than enough extra ammo to storm the trap in order to make it an easy fight without having to worry about being super precise and wait a long time for the platforms to take you to the other parts of the maze so you can destroy all the traps without accidentally wasting it and having to suicide, refill the energy, and then go all the way back to the boss room in order to fight it at full strength. Too bad the rest of the game in this port is a bit too easy in easy mode to make up for the easy Boo Beam Trap, but I at least rather play this stage on this version of the game on this difficulty than any other version of the game, at least. But by the way, do not bother hunting for this Beeline interactive port of the game, because Capcom replaced it with a shitty update version that runs in Java at an atrocious frame rate, which is shocking because the newer devices have so much more power than the iPod Touch I used ever did. But let's continue this Capcom showcase with Street Fighter 4. After loving the 3DS version of Super Street Fighter 4, I wanted more Street Fighter action, so I downloaded the iOS version in 2011 for $5. And looking at it now, you can tell a lot of downgrades were made. The visuals look really ugly, the controls look very strange, but it somehow works. It's a competent controlling port of Street Fighter 4, although content-wise there's not nearly as many characters as any other version of the game, and overall it's the worst version of the game to be out there. Still, it's a lot of fun if you're an achievement hunter at the very least and just want to practice playing fighting matches on the go, and they still update this version to this day, believe it or not, with Street Fighter 4 Champion Edition launching only a few months ago as of the making this video. Not bad, Capcom. Finally, the last game on this Capcom tour before I show off the final memorable game I grew up with is Capcom Arcade. An awesome early example of a free-to-play app done right. For a while, this app was actually really good. Solid emulations of Capcom arcade classics that you can play with free credits per day, all without spending a cent as long as you're patient and skilled at the game. You'd only need to spend money if you want to unlock a cheat code, buy a game for free play, or buy more tokens if you want to play only like 5 or 10 more times in a day for some reason. I can't do the single credit clear for this version of Puzzle Fighter you've seen, but back in 2011 I was really good at this game and got hooked on it, and for some reason the app glitched out one day and gave me every single cheat for the games without having me pay for them, but they aren't really worth buying in my opinion. I'd strongly recommend this app if it wasn't for several unfortunate factors. The first major issue is that it no longer exists on the App Store. Connecting to the online service to buy anything like more arcade cabinets, more credits, or free tickets won't work anymore as the servers are completely shut down. The second issue is that even if you did somehow load this onto your iOS device, you'd only be able to play for 1 day period, since on September 29th, 2011, Capcom did a horrible update to the game that made everyone I knew stop playing this, at least on the iOS App Store reviews, because they removed the option to have free plays a day, and they just gave you 10 tokens that would all expire at the end of the day you updated the app, which would force you to buy more tokens daily to play the game, or buy a free play machine to play the game of your choice infinitely, completely ruining the point of using the skill to extend game time by getting good at the games and making the best use of the free credits like in an actual arcade. This was a really scummy move, so as soon as I heard about this, I refused to update the game when the update came out, leaving me as one of the few people out there to my knowledge that actually has this game with a free ticket version, because I can't even update if I tried because the servers are down, so is the update that ruined it. It's still really interesting to look back and see how one update can ruin everything, especially since the update made the game a lot more similar to how modern free-to-play games function. Finally, we get to the game that made me quit playing games on this device altogether because of the immense disappointment. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1. I was so excited and happy to see that Sonic CD came to the iPod Touch in 2011, and it was an amazing port that I played the crap out of. So of course, hearing that was to promote Sonic 4 Episode 2, which was coming out in May of 2012, I wanted to play that game as well. But it was not coming to the real 3DS I owned despite Episode 1 doing it on WiiWare, and that was all because the crappy platform had a file size limit that was atrocious. So what better option for me than to play it on iOS, and since it wasn't coming out until May, I wanted to buy Episode 1 in the meantime on my iPod Touch. I found it decent. It actually feels like a game made for mobile devices first and console devices last, but some of the levels like this Labyrinth one really suck, even though I did enjoy zones like Splash Hill and Casino Zone, because they were a lot of fun. I never beat the game on iOS, but I was still eager for Episode 2 to come out for iOS, and I think to myself I'd eventually beat the game when it did. And when it finally did come out on iOS, I got the dreaded incompatible with the device message. Simply thinking I had to update my device like I always did, I had to wait for my grandmother to buy an entirely new computer to update my iPod because her computer wasn't capable of downloading the required update either. When we finally got the new computer sometime late 2012 and early 2013, somehow, after updating my iPod Touch, the game was still not compatible. My iPod Touch was altogether killed off by Apple and would not go past iOS 4.2. So I was really angry at Apple, and since most of the other iDevices available at the time were just iPhones, with the iPod Touch slowly dying, I didn't want to get an upgrade iPod Touch, nor did I ever want an iPhone, so I just retired gaming on my iPod Touch and used it as an internet browser for a bit, even though the Wii U at this point killed off my iPod Touch and I didn't really want an internet browser on it anymore. I was pretty angry at Apple. Angry to the point I would ask for a basic dumb phone when I was of age to get a cell phone, and while other kids in my school had a smartphone, I was the only one in my classes at the high school I was at to never own a smartphone at one point in time, at least until after I graduated, because at the end of last year, I finally upgraded to an iPhone SE, that you can see right here. I do worry that something like what happened before with the iPod Touch will happen again, because the fact that the new devices don't have the handy headphone jack you see right here, and I wouldn't want to buy an iPhone X or iPhone 8 because of the stupid headphone jack being gone, but I don't want to buy Android because there's no way in hell I'm buying a buggy mess like that, because I already have a grandmother who won't stop asking me to help her with her Android because of how many problems it has and how confusing the interface is. Besides, I don't want anything to do with an Android device after having programmed for one and seeing myself how buggy they are. But yeah, that's it for this short episode of Eternal Memories. It was a pretty fun look back on the device I grew up with, this handy iPod Touch here, and it was also fun to look back at the older age of mobile gaming and have fun reminiscing on the past, before it became a free-to-play infestation of, well, crappy apps. But there's still some good gems you should check out. It's just a shame that you'll have to rely on word of mouth in order to find the good ones. Back in the day, you'd have to rely on OpenFaint's free Game of the Day app along with a few Facebook-connected games like Bejeweled Blitz to get a good free-to-play experience, since most free-to-play versions at the time were just nothing more than glorified demos that would unlock the full game once you paid for them. Kinda like Super Mario 1 now that I think about it. In some ways, I kinda miss the older days of mobile gaming, especially without all the Chinese rip-off crap flooding the stores like they do nowadays. But at least I never had to go to Google Play, because that's literally where all the Chinese bootleg apps flood nowadays, because at least Apple somewhat restricts them, but there's still a lot of crappy apps in the App Store. And at least Apple also tries to feature the hidden gems now and then, but again, you'll have to rely on word of mouth to find the really good ones. For now, see you in the next episode, the subject of which will depend on whether or not you want to watch a VidMe exclusive or wait for a new YouTube video. Nevertheless, bye for now, and I'll see you later.